Some experts believe that dance is the most ancient of all human art forms.
I can only express all of these things through what I do on stage. I don't have any wonderful words. I also have a lot of inhibitions about formulating what I'm looking for, or feeling, or how important that is, what I truly feel, or how I see things. I just can't describe it any better.
When I hear words, for me, those are, it's a form of music.
We move. Our arms reach out, our knees collapse, our heads nod, our chests cave in, our backs arch, we jump, we shrug, we clench our fists, we pick each other up, and we push each other away. And this is language as much as it is action. This is what the body has to say about need, defeat, courage, despair, desire, joy, frustration, ambivalence, love. I think that these images resonate meaningfully in our minds because we have all felt these things so purely in our bodies. We have been moved. And I'm a choreographer and I work with the body because I'm pretty convinced about this. And I try to create performances that connect audiences to the stories that are contained in their own bodies.
It's a combination of music, the movement of the actor, but also the story, the way they express, the way they put emotion to that.
That's one of the beautiful things about the body, is that through movement, through dancing, you can literally embody the most abstract ideas.
Everything is reduced to a series of gestures and postures that tell the story.
You can say things through your body that you can never say through your words. It's a different language. There are different tools.
It's a visual language that the audience is already actually very fluent in, sometimes just without realizing it.
It's a way for me to express myself in like ways that words can't. Like if I'm upset, I'll dance. If I'm angry, I dance. If I'm happy, I dance. You know, it's something that is just always going to be my stress reliever, and it's always going to be something that I just feel my truest self when doing.
Actually, dance is a really inefficient way to tell a complex story, but it's very efficient if you want to express an emotion or a state.
I think dance is totally a different type of language, and I love how you were choreographing gestural phrases for us to communicate to an audience with.
Dance is a form of communication, and with that, I think different hand signals and body movements and all sorts of different things is just a way that we all communicate without having to speak and without using words and using different languages. Dance is a universal form, really.
As a choreographer, I can pretty much rely on the fact that you know the trajectory of sadness and suffering in your own belly, that you know what it feels like to reach for something or for someone. These dancers represent you. They take your gestures and postures and they exaggerate them, they concentrate them, they isolate them, and they elevate them so that what remains, what is here on stage, is something that is beyond words.
I dance because I use it as an outlet for expression. I can't think of any better way to release your emotions and say what you're feeling without words than through dance.
Dance to me is a different kind of world because it opens up a different language and a technique that people who don't dance wouldn't recognize. I dance to improve and prove to myself that I can do better than what I previously have done.
I guess dance is just my true form of expression. I talk a lot and everything, but I guess I've never expressed myself so deeply as I do when I dance. It lets me connect with emotions that sometimes I don't even know I'm feeling and I'm capable of feeling.
It's just something that I found more myself in, and like be myself and find new ways of moving and like communicating with others and just being able to release everything.
I can produce something with music that maybe triggers emotions in other people, also in myself, but I cannot release those emotions. So for me, playing an instrument, there's a lot of inside of myself that's bottling up, but I cannot get it out. And when I dance, I can actually release all those emotions that are being triggered through the music.
I do dance to express myself and express my feelings because sometimes words are hard to find.
I think that art is meant to open channels, keep channels open towards the humane. And it's a place to connect, and it's a place to have a conversation. For me, it's my way of coping. I wonder if I have the capacity to manage something so overwhelming. But at the end of the day, I know that it's through dance. It's only through dance that I have any hope of speaking clearly and truthfully about something that I care so deeply about. So I have to try. When I heard that piece of music, I just felt that it was going to be the right vessel within which we could have this conversation.
Music, for me, it's always been an outlet of some sort, whether it be just the basic art form and the outlet for creativity and all of that. It's an outlet for people to really connect with each other and understand each other, and it's even sometimes its own language. I even feel like some of the things you feel and are able to experience with music, you can't really put them into words, and I think that is a really beautiful thing. I also am so drawn to it because of the idea that you can really confide in music and become vulnerable to a point where it's not as uncomfortable and it's almost relieving in a sense.
I love music, and for me also music when I choreograph is very important.
I just like listen to a song and I won't stop listening to it until I figure out the reason I'm so obsessed with it is because I feel like I should dance to it. And it gives me like strength. It also takes me places very, very vulnerable, makes me mad and I can let it go. It clears my mind, but sometimes it does the complete opposite. So that's why I say it's like my true form of like expression. It's like my actual language. It's like what I was born to do, I guess, because the Alicia that I am when I'm dancing, it's like the Alicia that I want to be forever. That's my true persona. That's my one true self.
It's really just a mean of communication and a way to portray different emotions.
There's like a certain feeling to it, you know, when you want to express something and you know a certain word for it, but you can't in that specific language.
The choreographic process with Carmen was really interesting because her movement is so unique and so different than most choreographers. So it was really interesting to work with her because not only did she really work with us in a way that it wasn't all about like, this was her movement and this was what we had to do. Like she genuinely wanted our opinions and wanted to know what we thought and like what felt good and what we thought was working, what wasn't working, which was a great experience because, you know, it felt very collaborative and it was a very good environment to be working in. And she just has such interesting ideas for her movement and things that I would never, you know, think of. Like, for example, the making of the MRI machine was such an interesting concept, and the way that, you know, she was able to manipulate that idea and then manipulate us together to make that happen was a really cool experience.
She always comes in like ready to go with combos or something, that like an idea of something that she wants to do, and like especially with the whole cast, like everyone is super engaged and like ready to go in rehearsal, and we all communicate well with each other, and I feel like we all have really great ideas and we're not afraid to share that with the group, and we all are very like diverse dancers, so we can all bring multiple things to the table, which like helps Carmen too, because she has like this idea of having all of these different backgrounds and having all this different communication, and like that's why like dance is such an important form of that, and having different backgrounds in dance is just another way that you're communicating, and so much more. Like a flip can mean something for me that a leg for Antonia. Like, all of these things like Carmen's combining to make work.
Talk about language without words. I obviously related to it so much because I speak 3 languages, and sometimes it's really hard to switch back and forth. Sometimes you're thinking in one language, like I think in Spanish, but then I have to speak in English, and it's really hard for my brain to work. So when you explained to us your process, I was so obsessed with it and so happy that I got to be a part of it.
I really enjoyed working with her because it was always a fun time. It was always new, inviting ideas that either we could bring in or we were following from her. It was always a playtime kind of thing with her. It was a really fun experience.
I think it was really cool, the idea Carmen had behind her whole thesis. I think the mind is always something we are drawn to trying to understand, and replicating that through dance and music I think is even more extraordinary because it's just so complex, and within that complexity there's so much room to play with in both of these art forms. So I think that was a really fun topic to indulge in. A lot of the stuff that I've been thinking of for her piece I think is very within my own taste, and I'm happy to share that and happy to even collaborate with this whole group and everything. It's just a great thing to be able to work with other people and really get their insight, and I think that's really important.
What drove me the most was finding out how dance and language are similar in the brain. For me, dance has always been a way of communicating myself, and I feel like there's always a message to it. So I decided to take a scientific approach and compare how language and dance work in the brain, when it's being produced, when it's being interpreted, all the many different forms, and what culture has to do with it, and how it affects the brain. My project for this semester was going to incorporate different genres of dance, because different genres of dance usually entail certain communication styles. Certain genres tend to indicate a certain type of feeling, a certain type of emotion, and I was going to play around with that and explore that.
Watching dance is like a very broad thing. Watching musical theater is basically watching dance. Watching ballet is watching dance. Watching hip-hop or ballroom or contemporary dance trigger completely different feelings.
I also intended on switching them up. So, for example, how can I bring concepts of modern dance using ballet tools? Or how can I use ballet concepts, such as romantic stories, to modern movement? I do use a lot of improvisation in my work, and that's how I generate my material mostly.
Carmen picks such a variety of a cast that she can manipulate the fact that she's trying to bring in all these different languages that she speaks along with like the world, and she wants to show that it can come physically out of your body, this form of communication. We're all so different, especially within style, that we're all communicating the same phrase that she's taking but in different ways. That is also like another level of her communication that she's bringing to the table by who she chose, and it's just a very interesting topic because I feel like a lot of people who aren't necessarily in like the performing arts world, and they don't see like how that's a form of communication. They just see it as like a really cool style or a trick or whatever, and I think that it gets lost in translation. The fact that dance, all the performing arts are forms of communicating.
I also was in touch with my choreographer, Theresa Fervers, who volunteered to choreograph a solo for me, and her approach was that dance and language were completely different. They do communicate, but dance communicates something that words cannot. And I have to agree with her on that. For me, dance is about communicating emotions most of the time and not necessarily literal stories.
Why is dance necessary as a language? Like, what can we express with dance that we cannot with our words? We actually should have dance in a society. Why should we foster the arts? Because I do think that you can express different things than with words.
We were just bouncing off ideas off each other, which led to discussions and led to several messages and memos and notes.
Express myself way more through the arts than through my words. Not every word exists in every language.
I'm also a very visual person when it comes to choreographing and to creating work. So I used my notes and I used my imagery and my doodles and all that to create content to use as my choreography, but also to share with Theresa, to give her some of my same inspiration and my same origin, so we could leave from the same place but come somewhere completely different in the end. It's one of the highlights of dance. You can talk about one thing or literally look at one piece of paper that has one piece of information or no information at all, actually, and two people with very similar minds may still be very different in terms of creating something.
I'm a very visual person, and often more than not I get my ideas from looking at something, whether it be dance or a picture or any of those kind of visual things. I think it's also very helpful just because I think a lot of the role of music in these types of media formats is to be able to either tell the audience something or help them understand something that's going on. So I think in order to do that, you yourself need to know what's going on, and whether that be looking at the dance or looking at the picture or whatever it may be, that's one of the most helpful things you can do, as well as talking with the director or the creative head in whatever it is or whoever it is you're working with to really make sure you understand their idea.
That's what our goal is for dance, is we're showing what we want to express to you with our bodies.